Part 127. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 1270. Latest website. Lu Feng took over all the listing tasks of more than a dozen state-owned enterprises at the scene, and would be responsible for haircutting when the time came. The profits of securities companies are divided into many parts. One part is to help companies go public, affiliate, account opening, financing, securities lending and other businesses. The profits of this part account for about 50% of United Capital's profits. The other half of the income comes from investment. When they encounter good stocks, they will buy them in large quantities before they go public. After they go public, the stock prices will rise, and then sell them to retail investors. This is why many companies build crazy momentum in the days before they go public, and their stock prices continue to rise. But after waiting for a year and a half to see it, it had already fallen so hard that I couldn't even find the door. For fear of delaying things tomorrow, everyone did not dare to drink too much, so they dispersed hastily around 10 o'clock in the evening. The next morning, Lu Feng arrived at the airport as planned and then got on the plane. Although this was not a special plane, the seats were still relatively comfortable and had obviously been modified. The plane took off at 9 o'clock in the morning. Several bosses around Lu Feng were chatting to see who wanted to go public in Xiangjiang and how many more they could win over. One is several. It was Lu Feng's first trip with a group. When I saw the scene on TV, I thought I was on a plane with the leader. But now I know that there are thousands of people in this group, from staff to companies accompanying the group. On 10 planes, their treatment was nothing more than modified seats, which were similar to first-class seats. In addition to landing midway to resupply, the flight of more than 10 hours was really uncomfortable. Coupled with the forced jet lag, Lu Feng fell asleep and woke up all the way. When the broadcast said that the landing was imminent, everyone woke up from their sleep. The journey on the first day was different. The leader's special plane headed for Honolulu, while the business group headed for New York. This was also one of the few free times in the several-day trip. As the plane landed, it was already bright outside. They flew from daytime in China to daytime in the United States. After the plane docked, the bus below was already waiting, and the connecting department arranged for them to check into the hotel. Everything outside the airport was as before. The welcome ceremony was arranged in Xiangtanshan. Lu Feng and the others got out of the airport and got on the bus. They glanced at the crowds around them and suddenly saw a sign written in Chinese that read, "Dear, I'm here." Under the sign stood a slim man, staring at Lu Feng with bright eyes, sparkling with tears. Lu Feng stared at her blankly, with a smile on his face, and stretched out his hand to wave to her. Unfortunately, the distance was a bit far away, and it was not suitable to go there to meet him now. Looking from a distance, Zhang Fengxia was slightly fatter. The tiredness on her face when she was in Huasha was less tired and more charming. There was a stroller in front of her. She picked up Meow Meow and held it with her hands. The little guy waved his hand towards Lu Feng. "Mr. Lu, who do you have?" the person in charge came over and asked. Lu Feng came back to his senses and said, "Girlfriend." "Then go over and see you. The bus can wait." "No need, I won't waste everyone's time," Lu Feng said to him. "There will be nothing to do when we get to the hotel, you can move around freely." "That's right, get in the car." Lu Feng waved to her and got into the car. Zhang Fengxia kept staring at the car until the bus went away. She grabbed Meow Meow's hand and couldn't hold back her tears anymore. She choked and said, "That's Dad, remember to call Dad." At 10 o'clock in the morning, we checked into the hotel. The person in charge of the business group organized this time and briefly said a few words. He hoped that everyone would get rid of the jet lag as soon as possible and be able to move around freely. The next few days would be quite busy. After the meeting dispersed, Lu Feng walked downstairs without stopping, stopped a taxi and said to the driver, Sky apartment. The car sped away. When Lu Feng stood downstairs, he was still a little nervous. He took a deep breath and prepared to get up, but was stopped by the security guard. After registering and reporting, Lu Feng went upstairs. The decoration here is quite luxurious, with an internal swimming pool, gym, and living room. The 24-hour butler-style service is similar to the high-end commercial flats in later generations in China. Zhang Fengxia lived in a not-so-big house here, more than 180 square meters. When the door opened, Zhang Fengxia threw herself into Lu Feng's arms and held Lu Feng tightly. "Daddy! Daddy!" A childish voice came from the house, and a little guy slowly walked towards the door in a walker. Lu Feng picked up Zhang Fengxia and carried him into the house. It took him a long time to calm down. Lu Feng looked at the little guy in front of him and smiled involuntarily. The feeling of connection deep inside was something he had never experienced before. "Do you need to change your schedule now?" Zhang Fengxia asked. "Fortunately, I slept for a few hours on the plane, so it's no problem to stay up till night." Lu Feng looked her up and down. He still looked so beautiful after not seeing her for a long time. "That's good, it's almost noon. I asked the apartment housekeeper to buy groceries and cook for you." After Zhang Fengxia finished speaking, she sat there not knowing what to say. After not seeing each other for such a long time, their lives are no longer on the same track. Some of their usual conversations have been finished on the phone. At this moment, their eyes are facing each other and they are speechless. The silence in the room seemed awkward. The relationship between the two was so close yet so far away. Lu Feng was the first to break the silence and asked, "How is your studies?" "I have successfully obtained my diploma." Zhang Fengxia looked at Lu Feng and said, "You have lost weight and look a lot less immature. I remember that when I first met you, the young boy had an old-fashioned look. Now you finally look good. It matches the temperament." "Really? You have aged so much." Lu Feng looked at himself and said, "If you stay up late, you are indeed busy." The two were chatting, the doorbell rang, and the butler put the prepared dishes in. The two were cooking and chatting, trying to regain the feeling before. Talking about Huasha's current situation, Zhang Fengxia sighed when she heard Zhang Xiaoyan's expansion. If she were here, she would definitely not let her expand like this, but things have reached this point, either bankruptcy or capital injection. She doesn't have the basic qualities of a big businessman. In the end, it was me who took care of everything. Your parents hope you can go back. Go back next year and work with her to manage Huasha. Daily chemicals are a big consumer, and the market will be huge in the future." Lu Feng looked at her and said. Zhang Fengxia felt a little disappointed when she heard this, lowered her head and stopped talking. Lu Feng understood what she was expecting in an instant, and said, "As long as you go back, it will be yours, and you will definitely not be able to escape. It just takes time. When the company is making great efforts, there will be a lot of investment in the mainland next year, and I will also. I hope you can go back and help." Zhang Fengxia stared at Miao Miao, was silent for a while and asked, "Will you marry me?" "Yes," Lu Feng said firmly. A smile appeared on her face. She raised her head a little shyly, not daring to look at Lu Feng. She stirred the rice in the bowl with chopsticks in her hand and said, "Let's eat." The atmosphere at the dinner table instantly became much more relaxed, and she talked more, chattering about everything from complaining about the supermarket across the street to things at school. Lu Feng had no chance to interrupt, so he could only listen on the sidelines. Occasionally, when the child cried, he had to pick it up and comfort it. Lu Feng spent the whole afternoon playing with Miao Miao. The little kid had just learned to walk and was still not very steady. He shouted "Baba," "Dada," "Daddy," and would say a sentence in English from time to time. He looked so naive and cute. He really liked Lu Feng. Hard. At around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, Lu Feng couldn't bear it anymore and was yawning all over the body. Zhang Fengxia asked him to rest here, but Lu Feng didn't know what the arrangements were for tomorrow, so he could only refuse. Meow meow, say goodbye to Daddy. Lu Feng hugged the little guy and said, Daddy should still have time to visit you before I leave. When you return home, Daddy will buy you delicious food. When we get back, we can play with Sister Duo Duo, Zhang Fengxia said from the side. Lu Feng didn't know if she was showing her kindness, but the first thing he thought of was that with Duo Duo's character, this child might be ruined by her. Lu Feng returned to the hotel at 6 o'clock in the evening. He was so sleepy that he couldn't raise his eyelids and fell asleep on the bed. I woke up at around 4 in the morning and saw the bustling night scene in New York outside the floor-to-ceiling windows. It was no different from the first-tier cities in China more than 20 years later. Sometimes it makes people feel as if they have traveled through time again. After having breakfast at around 5 o'clock in the morning, we started to divide into groups, led by the heads of major affairs, to visit and learn from advanced technology companies. Lu Feng was assigned to the electronics group, with Mr. Su from China Electronics Technology as the group leader, and a group of more than 10 people boarded a plane bound for California. This was a special flight. In addition to domestic electronics entrepreneurs, heads of companies such as Intel and AMD were also on board. The flight lasted more than 3 hours. They talked about the current international situation and cooperation prospects in electronics, semiconductors, motherboards, etc. Few. The person in charge of reception at AMD was a beautiful woman. She looked to be in her 30s, with blonde hair and blue eyes. She not only looked good but also had a good figure. During the communication, Lu Feng could clearly feel that everyone could avoid eye contact with her for fear of causing any accidents. News is coming. Hello, Hurricane Capital, Lu Feng. Lu Feng stretched out his hand to shake the beauty's hand. Lu, she looked at Lu Feng with wide eyes and asked, is it the Lu from the Hong Kong dollar war some time ago? Lu Feng nodded, and the other person said with excitement, you are a very famous person in the United States. I don't know how many people are paying attention to you. I think you should write a book and write it as an autobiography in Hong Kong dollars and Thai baht. It will definitely sell very well. Oh, I'm so excited, let's give it a hug. In full view of everyone, Lu Feng stood up and hugged the beautiful woman. Mr. Su sat next to Lu Feng and whispered in Chinese, Mr. Lu, please be subtle. Then everyone started talking. These people didn't have much identification with Wall Street. They felt that it was a war. Americans in 1997 were much more tolerant and open than they are now, and they would never break their defenses just because of a trivial matter. Through understanding, Lu Feng learned that this beauty was named Amy. Latest website. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 1271. Latest website. As the plane landed in California, everyone became familiar with each other. On the way, they chatted about the semiconductor development cycle, especially the development direction of some cutting-edge technologies, and unknowingly they had arrived at the Intel wafer fab. The entire factory started operation in 1996 and covers an area of 1,000 acres. It is considered their best factory currently. It mainly produces 6-inch wafers. In the next 2 years, it will mainly produce 8-inch wafers. The group visited the clean room and the processes of monocrystalline silicon refining, silicon ingots, cutting, etching, etc. It must be said that the factory here is much more professional than in China. There are enough professionals, each performing their duties, and the entire environment and process it is particularly smooth and the yield rate is relatively high. Lu Feng didn't know much about these professional issues, but he knew a lot from Liuken's ears and eyes. After asking some questions, he felt a little heavy. Lu Feng was not worried about the factory. It was mainly about personnel training. There is a team of 200 doctors stationed in this factory. They communicate regularly with the team at the R/U00260 center, which not only provides them with theoretical and experimental research, but also provides them with practical opportunities. PhDs in chemistry are a rarity in private companies. During lunchtime, we will eat in the cafeteria. The treatment here is very good. Food, clothing, housing, and transportation are basically guaranteed. Even if it is not free, it is the employee price or there is a subsidy. The working time is guaranteed to be 8 hours, and overtime is paid for overtime. In the cafeteria, the waiter was serving the dishes. Lu Feng glanced at the surrounding employees. They all seemed to be in good spirits. The United States can still afford high welfare, let alone such a high-tech enterprise. I speak from my heart, Lu Feng whispered in Chinese, I even want to come to work here. Why else would those people in China rush to developed countries, Mr. Su said in a low voice. As the food was served, Amy said to everyone enthusiastically, there will be a welcome dinner in the evening. Today's lunch is scheduled here. The main reason is that I hope everyone can feel the atmosphere of the factory. Everyone was polite and then started to eat. At the dinner table, they talked a lot about the factory's annual output, automation, and the interaction between the factory and the R/U0026D center. Because I had to go to another factory in the afternoon, I didn't drink at noon. The output of this factory can meet Intel's global sales, and there will be no need to expand in the next few years, said the person in charge of Intel. Everyone felt a little disappointed when they heard this, but Lu Feng noticed that their wafer unit price was extremely high. What is the current cost and price per piece of 6-inch wafers? Lu Feng asked the person in charge of Intel. The other party looked a little embarrassed when he heard this. He obviously didn't want to tell his cost. Lu Feng saw the difficulty and hurriedly said, then let me give you a number. Is the price of a single chip less than $25,000? The other party smiled and said, almost. According to Lu Feng's speculation, their single chip price is $28,000 or even $30,000. This price is not even a little bit more expensive than Hurricane Semiconductor's Tianjin factory. Our 6-inch wafers can cost us $18,000 per wafer. We came here hoping to find opportunities for cooperation. Our factory is also a new one and is world-class in terms of production standards. The reason why the unit price is so low is mainly due to low employee costs, low land costs, and low prices for large consumption items such as water and electricity. I believe that exporting wafers from China to here will be much lower than the cost of production here. If Intel has demand in this area, we can sign a long-term order and the price can be negotiated. And in the next 2 to within 3 years, we can achieve mass production of 8 inches. Lu Feng was the first person to reveal his purpose. The person in charge of Intel at the scene sounded a little excited. However, they had made enough plans before coming. They basically figured out which company would seek cooperation in which aspect. Clear. It is impossible to OEM wafers to the mainland. They are talking with Samsung. Compared with the mainland, they are more willing to find some controllable regions or countries as OEM sites. Wafer is an industry that requires very high precision. I believe in your company's strength. However, as a global leader in semiconductors, our company has higher requirements on wafers than ordinary companies. He looked at Lu Feng's face. Lu smiled and said, we can go for an inspection, maybe we can cooperate. Lu Feng could tell that it was just an excuse and he didn't say anything polite, but Amy on the side noticed the price Lu Feng said. As the second largest semiconductor company in the United States, AMD has been suppressed by Intel for many years. The two are in a life or death situation in the market. It is an excellent opportunity for them to engage in a price war in the end market. At present, there are not many countries in the world that can produce 6-inch wafers, let alone 8-inch wafers. These countries are basically developed countries. Labor, land, water, and electricity are huge expenses, with a production cost of $18,900. It can be said to be unique in the world. After taking a break after lunch, Lu Feng took advantage of the break to walk around the factory, mainly looking at their office system and employee management. When he walked to a lounge, Lu Feng suddenly saw Amy talking on the phone in the corner. If he listened carefully, it seemed to have something to do with him. Lu Feng immediately pricked up his ears. I'm not surprised that they can produce 6-inch wafers. What's surprising is that they can increase the yield rate and reduce costs. The price is so advantageous, Amy said into the phone. Intel will not give them orders. I know this company. They are very short of orders now. As long as we give them a small profit, they will do it. This is a huge drop in our costs. It's not a matter of restrictions. This matter can be discussed. Now that we have visited, are there any restrictions? Lu Feng couldn't hear clearly from behind. Amy walked towards another corner, but Lu Feng could tell that the United States had restrictions on domestic semiconductors. Although it was not stated openly, the semiconductor companies had been informed privately. Lu Feng did not alarm the other party, turned around and walked out. In the afternoon, the group took a bus to visit. Compared with Intel, AMD's factory area was far inferior, especially in terms of equipment, environment, and personnel. In the evening, the group took a group photo, followed by a dinner. They stayed in California for one night and returned to New York tomorrow. According to the procedures, symposiums in various industries will be held tomorrow. At 9 o'clock in the evening, after 3 rounds of wine and 5 dishes, 2 pieces of red wine had already been ordered. The atmosphere was particularly good. Amy, as the most eye-catching beauty in the room, was good at singing and dancing. One of the bosses wanted to avoid falling behind. A piece of Peking opera. After drinking a lot of wine, Lu Feng stood up and went to the bathroom. When he came out of the bathroom, he happened to bump into Amy. Her cheeks were slightly red, her hair was tied up casually, and she looked like a standard European and American beauty. Hi. Lu, she looked at Lu Feng and said hello. Thank you very much for the hospitality. I had a great day today, Lu Feng said politely. Did I look good dancing just now? She looked at Lu Feng with a smile and said, that dance was specially performed for you. Lu Feng knew that Americans in this era were more open-minded, but in this environment, it was better not to make any mistakes. Lu Feng said to her, really? Thank you so much. I have to say that you are really beautiful. At this age, you can to reach this position, it can be said that you have both talent and appearance. That's not as good as you. Where will you stay tonight? She said and leaned over. The distance between the two was only a punch, and Lu Feng could smell the strong scent of perfume on her body. Leave a phone number. Our company still hopes to get some orders. We have an absolute price advantage in wafers. As he spoke, Lu Feng took out a business card from his pocket and handed it to her. Amy took the business card, leaned into Lu Feng's arms, and said, I'll call you. Just as Lu Feng was about to say something, Mr. Su came over and saw the two of them standing at the sink, rubbing each other against each other. He coughed twice hurriedly and heavily. Lu Feng raised his head and saw Mr. Su immediately taking 2 steps back. Amy looked back and saw Mr. Su smiling and saying hello, and then left. Mr. Lu, pay attention to the impact, Mr. Su said with some meaning, there is no rush now. No, just talking about business, Lu Feng said with a smile. After the dinner ended, everyone took the car back to the cave together. The people in the car had a simple exchange. At present, the most promising aspects are the exchange of technical talents, joining international associations, and achieving tariff reductions on some specific products. Mainly it is focused on bilateral trade. The possibility of foundry is not high, which is a bit uncomfortable for private companies like Hurricane Semiconductor. After Lu Feng returned to the hotel and washed up, his cell phone rang. When he answered the phone, Amy's voice came from the other end. Hello, What's your room number? Lu Feng understood that she was coming to the room. Let alone whether she wanted to talk about work or not, it would be a problem if someone saw her, so she must not come. Amy, I gave you my business card today, mainly because I hope to reach an agreement on foundry. We have the latest factory and the production capacity is enough to support the development of AMD. Both parties can cooperate in all aspects. Lu Feng looked at his mobile phone. Try to be in a working state. As for some barriers or bans between countries, I believe that through this visit, many obstacles will be eliminated. You will be able to get cheap wafers and you will be more confident in the market. We also have orders. It's a win-win situation. When Amy heard Lu Feng on the other end of the phone talking about business, her anger subsided a lot. She calmed down and then said that the matter still needed to be reported and she couldn't make the decision. For the benefit of both parties, I still hope you can report it. I believe everyone is happy to see this kind of cooperation. Latest website. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 1272. Latest website. After chatting on the phone for more than an hour, Amy just said to report the matter. She also believed that such cooperation was necessary for both parties. Then they talked about things in life. Amy told Lu Feng that she graduated from Harvard and joined AMD 5 years ago. She had never been in a relationship because she felt that none of the boys were good enough for him, and Lu Feng, a world-famous man like him, only someone is worthy of being her boyfriend. Harvard? Are you from the class of '92? Lu Feng asked. Yes, what's the matter? Then do you know someone? She is 1 year older than you. She is from China. Her name is Zhang Fengxia. Lu Feng asked. Open. Amy actually knew Zhang Fengxia. The two were in a hobby club before. Although they were not close friends, they were relatively close during school. Amy was shocked when she learned about the relationship between Lu Feng and Zhang Fengxia. She said, she returned to China after graduation and could not be contacted again. I didn't expect to be contacted again in this way. This is really surprising. Then you can go and have a chat with her, and I'll give you her contact information. Lu Feng gave Zhang Fengxia's home phone number to Amy, and then called Zhang Fengxia and told her about the incident. The person on the other end was surprised that Lu Feng actually met his classmate. So now you want me to help you promote cooperation between the two parties. Zhang Fengxia clearly sensed Lu Feng's intention to win over this relationship. By the way, it also depends on her level in the company, Lu Feng said with an embarrassed smile when his thoughts were revealed. Don't worry, I still have a good relationship with her. Although we haven't contacted her for some years, as long as the other party is willing to cooperate, everything will be fine, Zhang Fengxia agreed. She has not been idle in the United States for more than a year. She has been in contact with many high-level officials of the school during her school days, and these high-level officials have close ties with corporate executives. As for the relationship, you will find it if you look for it. After hanging up the phone, Lu Feng lay on the bed and took a deep breath. Now he can only hope that everything will develop in the right direction. If Hurricane Semiconductor gets this order, it will basically be at full production and full sales next year, and it will be a loss. Stop. The next morning, the group boarded the plane back to New York. On the plane, Amy was obviously in a different state than yesterday. She sat next to Lu Feng and chatted about herself and Zhang Fengxia. As the plane landed, the relationship between the two became particularly familiar. On the way to the meeting, several state-owned enterprise bosses even joked that after all, young people are popular, and old men like themselves are ignored. After several days of various meetings and visits, Zhang Fengxia also started to get busy. She had a meal with Amy, and contacted the president of AMD through the school to tell her about the cooperation between the two parties. The other party was very interested. But we can't agree on the price. Hurricane Semiconductor's wafer price is us $189 per wafer. The other party has determined the cost price accurately and only gives us $500 per wafer profit. At this price, as long as the yield rate or other costs are slightly higher, it will be a loss. On the last night of their departure, in order to promote cooperation, the delegation organized a dinner party, with Zhang Fengxia as the matchmaker for both parties. This meal was very good, because there were some key people there, and there was no need to worry about some of the bands above. Lu Feng gave the ultimate price at the dinner. The price of a single piece was $19,500 US. If you sign for 10-year contract, and the unit price of 6-inch wafers has dropped year by year. According to this cost, Hurricane Semiconductor does not make any money, and half of the transportation cost must be shared. They were also sure that Lu Feng would not make any money from this transaction, so they agreed simply. After dinner broke up at 10 o'clock in the evening, AMD would send a team to the Tianjin factory to inspect within a month. After the inspection found no problems, the two parties would sign a contract. This trip resulted in a lot of business, but compared with these businesses, the promotion of WTO issues was the most important. It was during this year that the two sides reached preliminary opinions on WTO issues, but since then they still have to work out the details. For more than 3 years. After the dinner party ended, Lu Feng sent Zhang Fengxia downstairs. The wind started blowing outside. It was already November 1st. Lu Feng took off his coat and put it on her body. He asked, "Is Miao Miao home alone?" "There is a place for childcare, and the apartment has professional childcare." Zhang Fengxia asked Lu Feng, "With such a low price, I don't understand why you agreed. Their production costs are very high, even if a single piece costs $23,000, I believe they will agree." Lu Feng breathed a long sigh of relief, took out a cigarette from his pocket and lit one, and said, "We have no choice now. As long as we don't lose money, we can do it. We have to occupy the position first, otherwise they will look for a more stable one at this price. We are basically doing it for nothing, but in the next few years, they will give me the profit. You are planning for the long term." "I don't know much about semiconductors." Zhang Fengxia looked towards the street and asked, "Are you going back to the hotel tonight?" "The business group will leave together tomorrow morning, and I won't violate the rules." Lu Feng took a puff of cigarette, threw the cigarette butt aside at the cigarette extinguisher, and said, "I'll take you back." Zhang Fengxia nodded and silently agreed. Sitting in a taxi, the two of them didn't know what to say. Lu Feng took the lead and asked, "It's okay for you to be here all the time? When are you going to go back?" "Next year. You can live in Xiangjiang when you go back. If you want to manage the company, I happen to have invested in a securities company, and you can take care of it," Lu Feng said. "Let's talk about it when we get back." Zhang Fengxia wanted an answer, but she didn't want to push too hard. She could only say this, of course it would be easy to go back, but what about after going back? Still procrastinating like this, how should he deal with the relationship with Zhang Xiaoyan, and what should he do with Duo Duo? This is destined to be a messy family. Zhang Fengxia is not willing to go back because she is unwilling to face such a situation. Rather than staying here, it is better to avoid it. After returning home, Zhang Fengxia made a pot of tea and then went to take a shower. Lu Feng felt a little dazed as he listened to the pattering sound in the bathroom. Zhang Fengxia's voice suddenly came from the bathroom, "The tea won't cool down for a while. You smell like alcohol. Do you want to come in and wash yourself? Then let's drink tea after washing up." Lu Feng stood up and walked towards the bathroom. For more than a year, for a woman after giving birth, I don't know how much longing she has accumulated. She may have lost count of how much loneliness she felt in her heart when she looked at this bustling city in those nights. In Xiangjiang, Su Yurong had packed everything. As she stepped on the plane, she probably wouldn't come back here in the next year. This top socialite who once dominated the financial world in Xiangjiang also left this land at this moment. As the plane took off, Su Yurong looked at the blue sky outside the window and felt much better. She took out yesterday's test report from her small satchel, which said HCG test report. After the plane flew smoothly, the flight attendant began to serve, walked to Su Yurong and asked, "Madam, what would you like to drink?" "We have red wine, juice, ice water. Just give me a glass of warm water." While drinking water, Su Yurong pulled down the sun visor and lay flat on the seat. If she leaves now, she will come back in a year. No one in this world can beat her, and she firmly believes that she is the final winner. On November 2nd, a plane landed at Shenzhen Airport. After Lu Feng and several southern entrepreneurs got off the plane took off again and headed for the capital. After getting off the plane, Lu Feng ignored the jet lag and called Wei Yandan as soon as possible, asking her to integrate all United Capital stocks in all previous accounts into Hurricane Capital as soon as possible, and to convene a board of directors within 3 days to issue additional shares to United Capital. Stock financing and expansion of shares for voting. As soon as the news came out that day, United Capital's stock quickly soared by 30%. However, due to regulations, the stock was suspended that day. In the afternoon, Lu Feng went home and rested for more than 2 hours. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Zhang Xiaoyan returned home. When she saw Lu Feng coming back, she was a little puzzled. "You're back so soon. The interview is over, why should I stay there?" Lu Feng went to the living room and made himself a pot of coffee to refresh himself. He sat on the sofa and looked at Zhang Xiaoyan not far away, feeling a little nervous. Some things have to be said sooner or later, but what happens after they are said? Lu Feng didn't want to leave Zhang Xiaoyan. She carried the good things from the past. Maybe the feelings between the two parties have faded now, but everything from the past supports the present. This is why many people are unwilling to divorce even if the relationship between husband and wife is in a mess. Because love has been there before. Zhang Xiaoyan seemed to sense his thoughts and said casually, "You should accompany her." "Who?" Lu Feng asked. Zhang Xiaoyan smiled, like a sarcasm, as if in Lu Feng's eyes, she was still the country girl who didn't understand anything, and she was ignorant about the world. "Fengxia," Zhang Xiaoyan turned back to look at Lu Feng and said, "Not long after she gave birth to the baby, I went to see her when I went to the United States." "You must have just named the baby Meow Meow." Lu Feng was dumbfounded on the spot, staring blankly at her. For a long time, he was the only one here who was the clown. "I don't mean to blame you, and there's no point in blaming, but you have to give her an answer after all, and you can't let her stay there forever." Zhang Xiaoyan was exceptionally calm and said, "When I leave, everything will be over." "All right. But I don't want you to leave." Lu Feng stared at her and said. "Then what do you want to do? Make a wife and a wife? Or make a wife and concubines like in ancient times?" Zhang Xiaoyan frowned slightly, with a bit of anger. "I don't want to leave you, and I also want to give her a place. I don't want anyone I like to leave. As a person, besides having enough food and clothing, my biggest goal is to do things that I like. If you continue to like her, you don't have to worry about separation." Lu Feng lowered his head and said. Zhang Xiaoyan stared at him in disbelief. He obviously lacked confidence when he said this. He didn't even dare to raise his head and cursed angrily, "Beast." Latest website. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 1273. Latest website. Lu Feng didn't want to hide his thoughts. Some problems must be solved. Procrastinating this would be irresponsible to everyone. Morally speaking, Lu Feng really couldn't face Zhang Xiaoyan, but from a human perspective, he couldn't do anything. Not willing to give up. A person's efforts always want to get more. Striving to be rich is not simply to eat and drink better, but to be able to control the people and resources around you. The poor often represent separation and loss, while the rich need, after selection, keep the good ones with you. Lu Feng's sense of morality prevented him from looking into Zhang Xiaoyan's eyes, but when this person was missing from his life, he felt that something was missing. What is capital? Capital means that I only care about my needs and don't care about your feelings. Don't think too much about things. I'll take duo away. You can do whatever you want. I wish you happiness. Zhang Xiaoyan stood up and prepared to go upstairs. I booked a boat ticket for the evening. I will be in Xiangjiang tonight. There is one more thing I want to tell you. I am the major shareholder of Huaxia, and the company in Xiangjiang is my current company. Lu Feng looked at Zhang Xiaoyan and prepared, he said as he walked up the stairs. Zhang Xiaoyan was a little surprised, stopped, and said to Lu Feng, "It's yours, then I'll give it all back to you. I don't want a penny. I can live without you. When the time comes, I will raise some money myself and become a daily chemical shop. It's better to be in a factory than to be irritated by such a person under the roof. Don't try to do what others do to me. You can leave, but the accounts must be checked clearly. Huaxia's capital flow, dividends, and investments in the past few years must be clearly explained, and whether any public funds have been misappropriated." Lu Feng lit a cigarette and said, "I don't want to talk to you. You calculate these accounts, I just want you to stay with me. This is also good for the child. Duo will be in the 3rd grade of junior high school next summer. High school is very important to her." Lu Feng. "Are you doing this?" Zhang Xiaoyan stared at Lu Feng in disbelief, and said in a sharp voice, "What? Huaxia's account cannot be paid even for 1 cent, and you want to send me to jail? You have this ability, of course you have this ability, your hands and eyes are astute. I'm not forcing you to death. I just don't want you to leave. From the beginning of the divorce to now, I always want to make the pain in your heart smaller." Lu Feng stood up and shouted at her, "Where are you going to leave me? What kind of life do you live? Do you think I am coveting your life? When I started that workshop, I asked you to calm down, but you... How many years have you been involved in that workshop? You have always been this way. You always want to keep your man within a range that you can control. I need a career, and I also need you. I want to find my own love in this society. Status, finding my own value and sense of existence, my identity. If I want to marry a beautiful woman, let alone a beautiful woman, I can pick the most beautiful penguin in Antarctica. Do you believe it?" Lu Feng roared. His eyes were bloodshot after a sleepless night, and he looked a bit scary. "Do I control you?" Zhang Xiaoyan couldn't stop crying, staring at Lu Feng, and said, "Then who do you think you are now? It's meaningless to argue like this, and it won't produce any results. Let's all calm down and give me a result before the end of the year." Lu Feng felt that his attitude might be too fierce, so he softened and said, "Why don't you think more about the children? Think about it, her life has just begun." "Ha ha ha," Zhang Xiaoyan smiled disdainfully, watching Lu Feng stand up and walk towards the door, and said, "Back then, I always felt that you had changed as a person. You seem to have changed for the better overnight. Now I know that you have not. It hasn't changed at all, everything is still centered on you, and everyone around you is here to serve you and need to meet your various needs. This is the truth of this world." After Lu Feng said, he walked out and got in the car, heading straight to the dock. Feng Huo arrived at the pier, parked the car casually, and walked towards the ticket check-in area. A security guard next to him shouted, "Master, you can't park here, you will be towed away." "Tug it away, no more," Lu Feng said and strode in from the VIP cabin passage. In the evening, Duo came back from school and saw her mother sitting on the sofa with red eyes. She felt that the atmosphere at home was not right, so she hurriedly asked, "Mom, who bullied you? What's wrong?" "It's okay seeing Duo." Zhang Xiaoyan seemed to have found support in her life. She reached out and held her in her arms, choking and saying, "You will always be my mother's little cotton-padded jacket. No one in this world loves you more than me. Mom, our class has a mock exam, and this time I got 5th." Duo seemed eager to obey today and took out the test paper from his school bag. Zhang Xiaoyan looked at the paper and felt a little comfort in her heart. "Are you happy?" Duo held her hand and asked, "What's going on? Is there a problem in the company? If you can't handle it well, just leave it to my dad. Although a few $100 million is a bit much, it doesn't count for him. What a big problem, crying because of this little money is not good for your health." "This little money? How many people do you know who can never have this little money in their lifetime?" Zhang Xiaoyan looked at Duo and said, "When did you start to think that hundreds of millions are this little money? I read some newspapers about the financial war my dad was fighting with that Soros. It said that more than $100 billion were invested, which converted into trillions of RMB. If you convert it, isn't it equivalent to 10,000 yuan? Do you want to spend a few dollars?" Duo said with a bit of innocence. Zhang Xiaoyan began to realize that the environment in which Duo grew up over the years, whether it was school, home, or the people around her, had made her not know what a normal family was. She is indeed excellent, and due to family reasons, the whole world revolves around her. Her self-confidence is unmatched by Zhang Xiaoyan. As long as she wants to say something, she will always blurt it out without considering the consequences. Zhang Xiaoyan was born in poverty. It was not that she was not good at speaking. It was because she had to consider whether others would be happy or unhappy when she said something, so she became bad at speaking over time. Zhang Xiaoyan knows what poverty can do to a person, and she doesn't want Duo to become that person. "Mom, I'm so good at it. Is there any reward?" Duo smiled mischievously and said, "I recently fell in love with a pair of pants. Last time I went to the mall with my classmates and saw them. They were a bit expensive. Can you buy them for me?" "Ah. How much?" Duo hugged Zhang Xiaoyan's arm, put her head on her shoulders and said coquettishly, "It's not expensive, more than 5,000, from Givenchy. The clerk said that Givenchy doesn't have a store in China, and those things are all imported from Hong Kong and Taiwan. I don't know if it's authentic or not." "More than 5,000? More than 5,000 for a pair of pants," Zhang Xiaoyan murmured to herself. Duo clearly felt that her mother didn't want to buy it for her, so she quickly changed her tone and said, "I don't think it is authentic, so I won't buy it. I'll wait until I go to Xiangjiang during the winter vacation. Let's eat." Zhang Xiaoyan stood up and walked towards the restaurant. As soon as Lu Feng returned to Xiangjiang, he kept calling. The first call was from Wei Yandan. Today, he has integrated all the shares of United Capital in his hands. Lu Feng has also approved the doubling of the shares issued by himself. Regulators released the news. The second call was from Assistant Su Yorong. Mr. Su would not buy the additional shares. Su Yorong had left. The position of director on the board of directors was managed by his assistant. Regarding corporate development and personnel changes, all votes were cast with abstention. The third call was from the China Securities Regulatory Commission, asking Lu Feng to explain within 5 working days whether the acquisition of United Capital shares involved stock manipulation or rat positioning. Lu Feng stopped the taxi temporarily and bought a few newspapers. The old newspaper seller saw that it was Lu Feng and praised, "All the companies that have issued additional stocks in history have all plummeted. Only United Capital has surged. Your reputation as a stock god has saved United Capital's life. I didn't expect it to rise." "Thank you for your compliment," Lu Feng said politely. You're welcome, we are all a family. I bought United Capital for 9 yuan. I trusted you at that time. They all said they were going to be doomed. I think whoever is going to be doomed, not even United Capital can be doomed, the uncle said excitedly. What kind of stock trading logic is this? Lu Feng asked confused. Who in Xiangjiang doesn't know that you have an affair with Mr. Su? The uncle winked and said, I know men better. If you don't save your wife, you have to save your lover. Don't worry, I will never sell this stock in my life, Lu boss, you have to pay dividends every year. Lu Feng was particularly embarrassed by the uncle's stock trading logic. He smiled and returned to the car. On the way back, Lu Feng read some financial newspapers. All of them were advocating for Lu Feng to save United Capital, and there were also reports that Su Yorong had lost contact. The content of the news was about a big opening and a closing, with the left saying that it would skyrocket, and the right saying that it would plummet. Lu Feng didn't see anything valuable. After returning home, he called Wei Yandan and asked her to inform United Capital that the board meeting would be held tomorrow. Then he fell down and fell asleep. Su Yorong lost contact and Lu Feng settled in United Capital. This incident was a big earthquake for the capital world, especially for Sun Hongkai. At around 7 o'clock in the evening, in a small conference room of Sun Hongkai, directors Feng Xiao and Zhenken gathered together to talk about this matter. No one knows whether Su Yorong has followed Mr. Chen's footsteps. Anyway, we can't reach you on the phone right now. Someone heard from her assistant that she has gone abroad. Zhenken leaned on his seat and looked at Feng Xiao. You were calling me brother Feng before. If our company's major shareholder wasn't Mr. Li Shaoqi, we would be the ones going abroad right now. Lu Feng looks like a smiling tiger, but he can still do business. Now that he has taken United Capital, he won't make any moves in the short term, another director judged. Mr. Feng, you must understand one thing. We are a community of interests. When dealing with Lu Feng in the future, you have to be careful. This man's intestines have 9 twists and turns, and he will get you in after all the twists and turns. Zhenken ordered. Feng Xiao knew about the relationship between Lu Feng and Su Yorong. In the past few years, in his eyes, the two of them could be said to be an unlicensed couple. However, there are now rumors that Su Yorong was forced to move away. Latest website. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 1274. Latest website. For the first time, Feng Xiao felt the cruelty of the business world. You can't teach others anything in your life, but you can teach them once. He would never have dreamed that his first lesson in the business world would be taught by Lu Feng. Early the next morning, news about United Capital broke out again and made headlines in major media, including some conspiracy theories. Lu Feng briefly read the newspaper and threw it aside. At 8:30 in the morning, Lu Feng took a car to the door of the United Capital building. Today was definitely a foreign day for the employees of Hurricane Capital, because they were in the same office building, and the employees of United Capital were basically locals. For Hurricane Capital, these foreigners are somewhat looked down upon. However, from today on, United Capital is a holding company under the name of Hurricane Capital. How can this not make Hurricane employees excited? No matter how reluctant United Capital's executives were, today they rolled out a red carpet in front of the building's entrance and pulled up a banner that said they warmly welcomed major shareholder Lu Feng and wished United Capital's 8th board meeting in 1997 a complete success. There were not many people from United Capital downstairs. On the contrary, most people from Hurricane Capital were downstairs. Wei Yandan stood at the gate and took the lead in applauding. Welcome, Mr. Lu. A woman in her 40s wearing a grey professional suit shook hands with Lu Feng and introduced, I am Su Wanhua, the general manager of United Capital. Mr. Su, I've met you before. Lu Feng glanced at the scene and said, don't be too nervous, there won't be any big changes. I believe everyone knows about my relationship with Mr. Su. I always need to leave for a while because of some things, and during this time, I just help take care of it. There was sparse applause at the scene, and the old business executives didn't believe a word Lu Feng said. Under the stars, Lu Feng entered the building and immediately started the board meeting. There were only 5 people left in the entire board of directors. With Su Yorong absent, the remaining 3 people's combined equity was just a fraction of Lu Feng's. There were indeed relatively few people, so Lu Feng pulled several senior executives over to listen in order to be open and fair. Now let's start the first vote. Mr. Lu Feng, as the largest shareholder of United Capital, convened a board meeting. The number of shareholders present and the shareholding exceeded 45%. This meets the requirements for the board meeting. It is now voted to issue an additional 5,860 shares. 170,000 shares, priced at 10 Hong Kong dollars per share, are fully subscribed by the designated person, Mr. Lu Feng. Please vote. Lu Feng raised his hand, and the 3 people next to him lowered their heads. Isn't this vote a humiliation to them? The voting results are now announced. Mr. Lu Feng agreed to the additional issuance. Yesterday's voting result of listed shareholders was 5.8% in agreement, and the additional issuance is effective. After the additional issuance, Mr. Lu Feng accounted for 70% of the total share capital, which is the actual control of United Capital people. Lu Feng took the lead in applauding, and everyone else followed suit and clapped sparingly. Thank you for your trust in me. I believe that I can bring a new atmosphere to United Capital. Let's move on to the second item. United Capital is currently mainly engaged in securities trading, and external investment accounts for very little of the overall operation. In order to enable the company to be more professional and change the name to United Securities. After a vote on the spot, United Capital officially decided to change its name to United Securities. The meeting was not long and ended in 2 hours. Lu Feng, the senior management, did not move and replaced people as soon as he came on. This may have a great impact on the company's performance. After the meeting, Lu Feng announced to the executives that United Securities would undertake the business of listing mainland state-owned enterprises, and these businesses would be sustainable. Since the liquidity of the listing is too little and is close to the delisting requirements, Lu Feng will reduce stock holdings by no more than 10%. The salaries and bonuses of senior executives have been increased to a certain extent, and real money can make people return home quickly. Mr. Su, the dinner party that Mr. Su hosted before was very good. If you want to continue it, you will be responsible for this matter. I am very trustworthy when it comes to women. Lu Feng reached out and patted Mr. Su on the back, smiling. He said, "Here at me, if you have talent, you can use it. As long as you are willing to pay, I will never treat you badly." "Thank you, Mr. Lu, I will definitely live up to your expectations," Mr. Su said with a smile as bright as a nightmare. Lu Feng settled in here, had a meal with the senior executives at noon, and then asked them to respond to supervision, while he went upstairs and had other meetings to hold. Returning to Hurricane, the first thing Lu Feng did was call Zhu Lidong and ask him to return as soon as possible. Sharp would just send a vice president there. AMD's orders are now the main focus, so Lu Feng told him to leave before leaving. When Sharp was informed of this matter, it was said that the 2 parties had reached an in-depth cooperation. "I'm just saying that they are suppressing you from cooperating with us just so they can cooperate with us," Zhu Lidong joked on the other end of the phone. "Ha ha ha ha," Lu Feng laughed and said, "Anyway, we have to make them anxious, otherwise these people won't take us seriously." "Then I'll book a flight ticket for the day after tomorrow," Zhu Lidong agreed. After hanging up the phone, Lu Feng looked at Wei Yandan and asked, "What is Mr. Lu busy with now?" "I just came back from Sweden a few days ago. It seems that in the Tianjin factory, the second-generation product is about to be mass-produced. They brought a team and said they are doing the final test. Wei Yandan replied, Mr. Zhang's team is also here. It is said that 8-inch wafers are also in trial production. It's a good thing. Let them stay in Tianjin. At the end of the month, I will accompany AMD people to conduct an inspection. As long as AMD and national procurement are removed, the whole next year will be much smaller. Lu Feng leaned on his position and thought. He said at once, if you calculate it this way, next year's R/U0026D funds will be at most $100 million. We are rich again. Wei Yandan smiled knowingly when she heard this. As an old person in the company, of course she knew what Lu Feng wanted to do. The company could not live a prosperous life. As long as funds were not so tight, he would immediately have ideas for expansion. Let's do this. Set up an investment department for the company. First form a team, and then slowly replace it. It will mainly conduct inspections of mainland companies. Don't let them make investment decisions. Just collect the company's information and report it to me. By the way, is there any news from Mr. Du in the mainland? Lu Feng asked. I handed in a market report some time ago. I took a look at it. The content was rough and a lot of the data was vague. As she spoke, Wei Yandan stood up and went out, asking her assistant to bring the report over. The report is not long, about 10 pages long, and provides a simple analysis of the mainland's mobile communications market, focusing on Bird mobile phones. As Jiaxun's mobile phones were hidden away, Bird bucked the trend and emerged. Now it is definitely the big brother in the domestic mobile phone market. At the same time, the construction of signal towers has also been mentioned. The previous signal tower construction agreement signed by Lu Feng and the local government was basically unfinished. However, there is news that the country will add 1 million signal towers across the country in the next 5 years. On the other hand, there is a trial operation of PHS, which is expected to be officially available to the public in January 1998. Du Guoying said in the report that PHS was popular in Hangzhou and the market response was intense, proving that domestic consumers are in urgent need of an affordable mobile communication tool. On the last page, he believes that the mobile phone market has undergone great changes compared to 2 years ago. It is no longer exclusive to businessmen and bosses, but ordinary citizens are also pursuing it, and it has already become a trend. Du Guoying believes that if you want to open up the market, the price must not be too high and cannot exceed the 3 to 5 month salary of ordinary people. Lu Feng agreed very much with the content of this report. He put down the folder and said, mobile phones are a good industry. Although the domestic market is not big now, it is enough to accommodate several domestic mobile phones. This year, in terms of budget, we will prescribe mobile phones leave some part, 100 million yuan. At the same time, we can't just stupidly pay for it ourselves. We are now owned by Hong Kong. After returning for the Chinese New Year this year, you can communicate more with some places. My requirements are that first of all, the city must have a port, the logistics must be convenient, and it must be free. When we grant land, local banks must also support it by providing an interest-free loan, and taxes must also be waived. Wei Yandan understood. He just didn't want to pay a penny, but if he wanted a big factory in a port city, it would be best to set up a separate industrial park and spend some money to buy a set of equipment to start the work. I don't know much about the situation in the mainland now. I need to go back and ask more about this matter, Wei Yandan replied. Let's do this as a matter of fact. Lu Feng stood up and said, I will take a few days off after finishing my work with United Capital. I will hold an annual meeting this year to bring the two companies together. It will be lively. Lu Feng took a week off, and United Capital officially changed its name to United Securities. As United Securities announced that it would be responsible for the listing of many large state-owned enterprises in the mainland, it once again became a hot topic in the financial circle. Everyone in the entire financial circle understands that Lu Feng represents mainland finance, and United Securities will become an intermediary, relying on Lufeng's strong relationships to continuously send mainland companies to Hong Kong for listing. From now on, United Securities is no longer a small and medium-sized securities company, but has become a large securities company. Some people even estimate that if 50% of mainland companies are listed through United Securities, then the market value of United Securities in the next 10 years may be exceeded 100 billion Hong Kong dollars. A week later, United Securities changed its name and ended its trading suspension. On the first day of resumption of trading, it rose 97%, and once approached a market value of 15 billion. Lufeng asked Mr. Su to set up a reception group for mainland state-owned enterprises to go to the mainland to communicate with many enterprises. At the end of November, a group of more than 30 people from AMD inspected the Tianjin factory of Hurricane Semiconductor. Lufeng was accompanied by local municipal leaders. They visited the factory for 2 days and held a technical exchange meeting. They compared the new factory with recognized. Then he moved to many places and inspected domestic R/U0026D centers. Latest website. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 1275. Latest website. On December 4, Hurricane Capital and AMD held a signing ceremony for a commissioned project in Shenzhen. Not only people from the municipal government came to the scene, but leaders from the China Semiconductor Association were also present. There were many media and CCTV also followed up and reported. As the signing was completed, applause erupted from the scene. Lufeng stepped off the stage to accept an interview with the media. Facing the camera, Lufeng said with joy, "Today has a different meaning for the development of domestic semiconductors. We have entered a new stage in wafer foundry. It has become a link in the global industrial chain, and I believe that in the future, Huaxia Semiconductor will occupy a pivotal position in the global industrial division of labor. Hurricane Semiconductor will also devote his life to achieving this goal and contribute to the country's high-tech industries." After the interview, a dinner was held in the evening. While changing glasses, Lufeng took the time to chat with Vice Mayor Liu. After thinking about domestic cities, among various supporting facilities, Shenzhen had to be considered. Especially in the long run, Shenzhen, where the electronics industry will be concentrated in the future, will still be the top city in the country. Lufeng explained his conditions, which was that he wanted to build an industrial park in Baoan district. The area should be large to facilitate subsequent expansion of production. Let me tell you, this time I have become a Hong Kong investor, and this preferential policy must be in place, right? In addition, we are also old acquaintances. Why did I think of Shenzhen first? Lufeng hugged Vice Mayor Liu the shoulder said, "Mainly because of you. It wouldn't feel right if I moved to another place." Vice Mayor Liu almost cried when he heard Lufeng's condition. He took a deep breath and said, "Why don't you go talk to Huang Youwei? Look at you, what did you say?" "I broke up with him and stopped contacting him." "That person is not good. Don't think that his official position is higher than yours. His structure is really not as good as yours." Lufeng stared at Vice Mayor Liu and assured, "I'm telling you this, your future is much greater than that of Huang Yuda." "I may be transferred next year," Vice Mayor Liu said awkwardly. "Then let's talk about it." Lufeng didn't want to waste any more words. There is only 1 month left this year. If he wastes so many words, it won't be all wasted when he leaves in March next year. "Mr. Liu, you are also a big entrepreneur now. I saw in the newspaper that you said in an interview during the Hong Kong Defense War that you must have feelings for your family and country. It is really difficult for provinces and cities now. You can't do this. No one has done it. Money." Vice Mayor Liu persuaded him. Vice Mayor Liu is now the deputy mayor of Shenzhen. Even though he is a deputy, his rank is higher than the deputy positions in ordinary cities. He has received some rumors that he has been transferred to the mayor of an ordinary city, which is simply a promotion. After being transferred to a local area, you will definitely have to face the problem of improving the economy. Now establish a good relationship with Lu Feng to see what supporting industries can be established there. Saying these words is also to give him a vaccination in advance. Lu Feng frowned a little when he heard this and whispered, "What's the use of telling me you're poor? If you want to develop, you have to find a way. Being poor doesn't mean you have no money. You can also develop with debt. What do local banks do?" Ah. Vice Mayor Lu was stunned. Looking at Lu Feng, he didn't expect this person to have such a dark heart. Don't look so naive. If you want to develop, you have to be bolder. The superiors don't allow you to go into debt, so just do it quietly. As long as you make money and plug the holes, you will be a good official. Lu Feng looked at it. He said. Seeing how sophisticated he looked, Vice Mayor Lu secretly thought, what if this hole can't be plugged? Then use yourself to block it? When Lu Feng saw him like this, he already knew in his heart that this man had no courage and no great development. Back then, even Lao Huang dared to touch 1110. What does it want? What you want is that you can still develop without giving money. If you have sufficient funds, even a monkey can do it. After the dinner party in Hong Kong noisy, Lu Feng did not go home, but found a hotel to stay. The end of the year was not far away, and Lu Feng didn't have much to do except the annual meeting. After staying in the mainland for a week, Lu Feng focused on communicating with Du Guoying. He personally visited the market several times and conducted a survey. The result of the survey was that the current mobile phone market is developing faster than in the previous life. It has become urgent to speed up the time to enter the mobile phone industry. At the same time, Lu Feng also conducted an inspection of the domestic internet. At an internet conference, Lu Feng gave a speech. He believed that the development of the domestic internet is at the dawn of time, and hurricane capital will focus on it in the future. Pay attention to the internet and invest. On December 12, Lu Feng returned to Xiangjiang and began to reform United Securities. He incorporated United Securities into hurricane capital. Starting in 1998, the finances of both parties were opened up. Hurricane Capital was officially established as a group model to facilitate the development of United Securities. Funds are better allocated through group finance. On the last day of 1997, Hurricane Capital Investment Group held its first annual meeting. Lu Feng attended and gave a speech, setting the route for 1998 as Big Development and Big Matrix. In 1997, Hurricane Capital suffered an overall loss of $130 million. The main reason for the loss was in the semiconductor direction. However, entering 1998, Hurricane Semiconductor has already received a large number of orders, and it will officially make a profit this year. There are less than 2 months left before the Chinese New Year. For some reason, Lu Feng feels that time is getting faster and faster. 1 year has passed in the blink of an eye. At the end of the year, when he was having dinner with Zhu Lidong and other senior executives, he felt this emotion too. They all agree that it feels like the New Year has just been celebrated and the Chinese New Year is about to come again. Time seems like an hour hand for children, but it becomes a second hand for adults, and ticking is a circle. As promised, his parents called him and asked him if he was going back for the New Year. Lu Feng thought about bringing the two of them to Xiangjiang, but he also thought about spending time with Zhang Xiaoyan. The problem is that Zhang Fengxia is coming back this year. This problem gave Lu Feng a huge headache for a while. After much deliberation, he decided to stay in Xiangjiang. In any case, Lu Feng felt that he still lost a lot of money to Zhang Fengxia. On January 15, 1998, Huaxia's year-end report came out and was handed over to shareholders. Lu Feng looked at the report and knew that Huash's problems had to be solved. The overall assets are already negative, and the largest arrears are project payments, raw material payments, and employee wages. To revive this company, it will take more than 200 million yuan. Lu Feng wanted to call Zhang Xiaoyan, firstly to talk about this matter, and secondly because he felt that something was wrong with him that day and wanted to have a good communication, but no one answered the call. Zhang Xiaoyan took Duo back to her hometown half a month ago. The last 2 months may have been the most confusing 2 months in her life. She wanted an answer, but she didn't know who to ask. Compared with last year, Zhang Xiaoyan's salary was gone. Last year, people from the village who worked in the factory, some of whom had not received their wages, crowded in front of her house to ask about it. For a boss like you are not short of these 2 months' salary. The total is only about 1,000 yuan. Without this 1,000 yuan, our family will not be able to make it through the year. That's right, for such a big company, you won't be short of this little money. If I don't have a good year this year, your family shouldn't even think about it. Everyone was making noises, some were pleading, and some were threatening and coercing. The scene seemed a bit chaotic. Zhang Xiaoyan heard the chaos in her ears, and her head was almost full. The unprecedented pressure made her breathless. Stop arguing, Zhang Xiaoyan stood on her head with her eyebrows and said to everyone, after the new year, wages will definitely be paid. This is a temporary situation. I don't have the money to pay you now. This is to go to the enterprise. The accounting has to be recorded by the accountant. Don't talk to us about this. Aren't you the one who owns the company? The whole factory belongs to you. You are trying to fool us with this public and private thing. Last year, there were hundreds of people in the village, but this year they were all blocked in front of the house. Zhang Xiaoyan's father used to walk sideways in the village, but he didn't dare to go back to the village after the Mid-Autumn Festival last year. Even if he was hiding in the city, people would come to ask for help. Statement. It's not much money, just leave it to others, Zhang Xiaoyan's mother said impatiently. The total amount is less than 50,000 yuan. A group of people who have never seen money have been making trouble for most of this year. Our Zhang family, no matter how miserable you are, you still have this. If you just sweep it on the floor at home, the scraps of gold in it will be enough for you to last a lifetime. Zhang Xiaoyan has never heard such arrogant words from her parents, and her family has only been rich for a few years, but it feels like they belong to a wealthy family. I'll go to the city to get the money. You name it, I'll have the finance department check it, and I'll send it to you when the time comes. Zhang Xiaoyan drove straight to the city and worked hard for 2 days before settling the matter. Neither her 2 eldest brothers nor her younger sister came back during the Chinese New Year this year. Her parents said they were both busy and should live their own lives, but Zhang Xiaoyan heard different news from the village. Everyone in the county knew that Zhang Xiaoyan could no longer survive and that the factory was going bankrupt. In the past, everyone in the village would greet everyone with a smile on their faces, but now they avoid him, and the warmth of human relationships seem particularly real at this moment. After lunch, sitting on the kong at home and chatting, Zhang Xiaoyan briefly explained the current situation. She thought her parents would have to say something to her, but when the old couple heard that the business was going to be finished, they still owed Lu Feng a favor. Big money, suddenly urgent. Why are you so stubborn with others? I heard people say that the factory can't pay wages, so I thought it was just a temporary difficulty. What has happened to you? Mom said anxiously. Lu Feng will tell you the truth, so hurry up. How can he still quarrel with others? Doesn't he just want to take that woman into the house? As long as he gives enough money, my mother will take care of the child for her. I'm telling you, you must not let Lu Feng get rid of you. I have never been out of the house, and I know how powerful they are now. Don't always act like the world is centered on you. People are rich and wealthy. Damn it, How many more women are causing trouble? Dad also said reproachfully, you shouldn't quarrel with others. Zhang Xiaoyan leaned against the wall and looked at the window silently. The old-fashioned window frame was covered with mottled light blue paint, and the glass was attached to the diamond-shaped window frame. The sunlight passed through the glass and drew diamond-shaped pictures on the earthen bed. She didn't speak, just watched quietly. Maybe she was dead at this moment. Latest website. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 1276. Latest website. The whole family opposed Zhang Xiaoyan's divorce from Lu Feng, especially after learning that Zhang Xiaoyan would face debt problems once they were completely separated. Zhang Xiaohong was the first to call back and let her sister understand the reality. If she owed money, she, as her sister, would not pay a penny. We are all a family, so say ugly things first to avoid looking bad later. The two sisters-in-law also took turns calling. On the one hand, they hoped that she would continue to be with Lu Feng, so that the whole family would not have to worry too much about money. Even if people no longer want to see the people here, if they leave a little space between their fingers, the money that comes out will be enough for them to eat and drink for a lifetime. On the other hand, they are also saying subtly that if something happens, don't worry about how much money you owe, they will definitely not care about it. Their own life will be difficult, and they can't care about others. Zhang Xiaoyan is no longer the little girl in her early 20s. She has completely understood what kind of world this is. Even Duoduo plays with a group of children in the village because Duoduo has money. She wanted to get rid of these countless times, but she was restrained countless times. No one in this world can be truly independent. The rich are cooperating with each other, while the poor are pulling each other. When you have money, relationships will cling to you and form a network of relationships. Whether you like it or not, these things will form naturally. When you want to stop choosing wealth and make your own independent choices, the network of relationships around you will help you make the choice. Everyone's body is covered with invisible threads, which go deep into the bone marrow and pull at your hands, eyes, and mouth. Nose, there are things you can't say or put your hands on. Zhang Xiaoyan already understood at this moment that she could not control her own destiny. She wanted to live a simple life of ordinary people, but there were too many threads to be torn. If she forced her to choose, the pain of breaking the threads would be absolute. It was something she couldn't bear. On January 20th, a passenger plane took off from New York and its destination was Hong Kong. Because they had to choose to celebrate the New Year in Hong Kong, the family's nanny started tidying up the villa a month in advance and was also doing some decorations. Various costumes decorated the villa in a festive atmosphere, and a batch of ingredients and decorations were imported from overseas. As the new year approaches, there are more activities in the financial industry. Mr. Su took over Su Yorong's financial dinner. Some important people, Mr. Su, still hoped that Lu Feng would come to receive it in person, so as to show that he took it more seriously. Starting from January 5th, Lu Feng entertained a number of senior executives at his home, followed by wealthy and famous people from Xiangjiang. It was inevitable that they would have to deal with each other here, and it might be necessary at some point. From this year on, the Lu family's New Year's Eve family dinner became a tradition. Many wealthy families in Xiangjiang moved closely together. Lu Feng also often interacted with senior executives in Xiangjiang. The rest was the exchanges between international finance and major banks. On January 21st, Lu Feng and his entourage were speeding towards the airport in 3 Mercedes-Benz vehicles. In the VIP reception room, Lu Feng looked at the tea in front of him and had no intention of drinking it. The flight attendant next to him said with a smile, "The flight will take another 5 minutes. We're about to land, Mr. Lu, don't worry, our airline will definitely take good care of Miss Zhang and the baby on the plane." Lu Feng didn't say anything, he lit a cigarette and smoked silently. As the plane landed, First-class passengers got off the plane first. Lu Feng was afraid of disturbing his children, so this time only Zhang Fengxia and her daughter were in the first-class cabin. "When did you arrive?" Zhang Fengxia walked in and said happily when she saw Lu Feng. "It didn't take long, it's only been an hour." Lu Feng saw the staff behind him helping to push the stroller, and Miao Miao had already fallen asleep in the car. The suitcase was placed directly on Lu Feng's car. "Let's go home." The family of three got in the car and went straight to the villa. When they got home, Miao Miao was still awake, so they handed her over to the team of nannies hired a month ago. Zhang Fengxia looked at the villa and said, "Isn't this too big?" "It is indeed relatively big, but there are many nannies and it is not obvious at ordinary times." Lu Feng looked at her and asked, "Are you tired? Why don't you take a nap?" "I'd better endure it, otherwise I won't be able to sleep at night." Lu Feng took her to briefly visit the rooms in the villa to get familiar with them. At around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, he sat on the balcony to bask in the sun and drink coffee. "My parents know I'm back, and I'm thinking now whether I should let them come over to celebrate the new year together." Zhang Fengxia looked at Lu Feng and said, "On the plane, I was thinking, if not, conflict at the starting point of the new year is not good. Some things have to be faced sooner or later." Lu Feng put down the coffee cup in his hand and said, "Come over here, just in time to chat. Let's talk about it when we wake up tomorrow." At around 4 o'clock, Zhang Fengxia went back to her room to rest. Lu Feng cancelled all activities approaching the New Year's Eve and hired several local chefs according to the taste of Zhang Fengxia's parents. The next morning, Miao Miao was sitting on the lawn walking around in a walker early in the morning. Several nannies accompanied her. In order to keep her children company, Lu Feng bought a few rabbits and little ducks. "There is also a cat." Zhang Fengxia called back and said that she wanted to invite them to come to Xiangjiang to celebrate the new year. Even though the old couple on the other end of the phone were extremely unwilling, what could they do now that they had given birth to children? People say that things become more mature when they are raw, but these two have become popcorn, and it is too late to say anything. "Then let me ask you, has his ex-wife been dealt with?" my mother asked on the other end of the phone. "I heard that the two of them have been living together and have a child." "These are all things." "Yes, who is the child with?" "He's not young now, is he? You can't just marry and be a stepmother." Dad's voice came from the phone. Zhang Fengxia didn't know much about Zhang Xiaoyan, but she couldn't bear to make things too tense. In her eyes, Zhang Xiaoyan was a good person and a miserable person, not to mention Duo. She had always liked that little guy. "I just want you to spend the Chinese New Year together. Why do you ask so many questions?" Zhang Fengxia said, a little unhappy. "These are my affairs, I will handle them myself." "What's your matter? Do you know that your father, the mayor, can hardly hold his head up? Someone in the work unit wants to introduce you to someone and ask about your situation, but your father dare not tell them. It would be embarrassing if he did." Tiou's mother's voice was filled with disgust. "Then don't come." Zhang Fengxia hung up the phone angrily. Lu Feng heard the quarrel and came over and asked, "What's wrong?" "What should they do if they ask Sister Xiaoyan?" Zhang Fengxia said casually. In fact, she also wanted to know how Lu Feng planned to deal with this matter, so she asked through her parents. "Some things must be faced after all." Lu Feng sighed, looking a little melancholy. He had called Zhang Xiaoyan several times during this period, but no one came back. He originally thought about calling her parents, but then he thought about not making too many mistakes. "What's wrong?" Zhang Fengxia asked, concerned. "I told her, but she couldn't accept it. During this time in my hometown, if it's just an individual, it would be simple. Everyone can just go their separate ways. The main reason is that there are children." Lu Feng sat down and lit a stick. "Flu, these 8 years have been an earth-shaking 8 years for both of us." Lu Feng's memories extended to 1989, and he talked about what the situation was like back then. His family owed a few cents, and he was forced to pay back the money. At that time, he was determined to let his wife live a good life. This journey has been bumpy, and the original vow has come true, but the original intention has fallen apart along the way. Zhang Fengxia could tell that Lu Feng couldn't let go of Sister Xiao Yan at all. If he said he didn't feel uncomfortable, it would be a lie. Which woman can accept the man she likes pretending to be another woman in her heart? But the reality was like this. She knew that she had to accept it. If she wanted to stay with him, she had to accept everything. She had figured this out from the beginning. It's really not easy for her. If I were her, I might not be able to do what she is doing now. Zhang Fengxia was silent for a while and said, "Why don't I talk to her after the new year? It's not just a relationship issue, but also a company issue. Huaxia has essentially gone bankrupt, and the debt is a huge amount of money. What will she do if it's a one-off situation?" Lu Feng took a deep breath and said, You should get to know her. She has no business talent, but she is kind. Zhang Fengxia is a smart person, and now she understands what Lu Feng wants to do. She sits there without saying anything, even though she joked before that good sisters share a man. But if this is really the case, how can it be so easy to accept it? The living room fell into silence. Zhang Fengxia felt that not letting her parents come was the right decision. It was easy to start a fight in such a scene. She knew from the beginning that falling in love with a man like Lu Feng was destined to be different from ordinary people, but such ethics challenged the bottom line of a highly educated person. Let's not talk about this. After the new year, I think it's better for you to go out and work, so as not to be out of touch with society. Lu Feng put the cigarette butt in the ashtray and said, Huaxia, United Securities, the newly established investment department of the group, you can choose a location. Of course, if you want to do it yourself, you can. I accept, Zhang Fengxia said suddenly. Which position? I accept Sister Xiao Yan. Since you are reluctant to let go, we will live together. Such a big house will indeed be empty for the two of us. Zhang Fengxia looked at Lu Feng and said. The biggest difference between Zhang Fengxia and Zhang Xiao Yan is that she always knows what she wants and dares to make choices. She likes Lu Feng very much and understands that such a person is bound to have a lot of flowers and plants around him. It's better to have one more person than to have invisible people outside, and she also understands that if Lu Feng can't let go, even if the two of them don't contact each other in the first few years, the next contact will immediately become a raging fire, and she will become a that sinner. Lu Feng looked at her, stretched out his hands to hold her in his arms, holding her close to his heart at this moment, without any unnecessary words. Latest website. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 1277. Latest website. It's the end of the year of the ox has slipped away so quietly, and the year of the rat is about to arrive. The house has already been decorated in a peaceful way. This year, Lu Feng also ordered people to buy a lot of fireworks. Because this villa area is full of big shots, Lu Feng took Zhang Fengxia to visit some of them, inviting them to watch the fireworks together. At the same time, he told them that he was going to set off fireworks and not to make a fuss. There was a New Year's Eve event in Repulse Bay this year, and many people gathered. Lu Feng also scheduled the New Year's Eve dinner on the lawn in front of his house. The weather was a bit cold, so a lot of air conditioners were installed, which was not much different from summer evenings. The invited cook could only cook for the three of them because Zhang Fengxia's parents were not coming. A curtain was hung on the site so that you could watch the village party. It was considered a special year. As for the flavor of the new year that Lu Feng had felt on the alley streets in those years, he didn't feel it this year. For the rich, there weren't many opportunities to get in touch with the life of the lower class. It's not that it's noble, but the place where people go in and out of daily life is completely isolated from ordinary people, and Lu Feng doesn't have time to go to the vegetable market. This year's Spring Festival Gala started on time. In addition to Zhao Benchen's New Year's greetings and teacher Zhao Lirong's Kung Fu order, Lu Feng was also moved by the song Meet in 1998. When the song started playing, Lu Feng hummed along. He was stunned for a while and then laughed randomly. "Why are you laughing?" Zhang Fengxia asked in confusion. "I think of Charlotte," Lu Feng covered his mouth and said happily. "Charlotte? Your friend?" Zhang Fengxia said with some confusion. "Why is your friend so cool? If you have a chance, bring me to meet him." Lu Feng felt that he and Charlotte were really friends. During the song, a firework shot into the sky, blooming with dazzling brilliance in the moonlight sky. As more and more fireworks came, people gathered at the beach also saw the fireworks here, and they all faced this side and shouted. Zhang Xiaoyan from her hometown was sitting on the Kong and watching TV. The fire outside had been lit. According to northern customs, a fire was lit on the night of New Year's Eve and the yellow watch was burned at the same time to pray for good weather in the coming year. After the Zhang family finished burning the yellow watch, they knelt on the ground and kowtowed 3 times with great piety, muttering that they wanted to bless the Zhang family with great wealth. Duo Duo followed suit and knelt aside, muttering that he hoped the teacher would not leave any homework. The New Year is a joyous gathering, but in the adult world, the New Year is more like a homework check. Check each other to see what you have done this year. Is it progress or regression? Everyone gathered together to eat and drink, and inadvertently talked about work, income, family, and even a pair of bright clothes, which represented your hard work in the past year. Although words of blessing are spoken, an unintentional expression will encourage the other party to work harder in the new year. It is particularly interesting to carefully analyze this ancient activity of New Year. In fact, it contains many core elements. Lu Feng has no time to stay at home since the 3rd day of the Lunar New Year. In addition to New Year's greeting calls, he needs to attend various activities of senior financial officials. It's just that semiconductor suppliers and partners at all levels are easy to talk to. Lu Feng has just taken over United Securities, and many large mainland companies are about to go public in Hong Kong. They all need to maintain relationships. If the level of docking is too low, the other party will feel that they are not sincere enough. These things make Lu Feng very annoyed. At the same time, he also has to have dinner with senior management of fund companies. Firstly, it is to maintain the market value of United Securities. Secondly, if the listing breaks in the later stage, funds need to be brought in to cover the losses. These funds it is the last resort for securities. At the same time, we also need to communicate about the transaction fees for the new year. To put it bluntly, the securities market is a relationship field. It doesn't matter which securities company you use. If you want to win over, in addition to having strong enough relationships and being able to make up for the customer elsewhere, naturally, vulgar things like beauties and handsome guys are indispensable. Lu Feng was extremely busy, and Zhang Fengxia was not idle either. She left the child to a nursery to take care of her, while she began to manage the investment department of Hurricane Group. Zhang Fengxia originally wanted to go back and take over Huasha, but she also felt that if she went back and took over the power of Huasha, what would Sister Xiao Yan think? The securities were too messy, and all kinds of drinks and dinners were indispensable, which is not nice to say. Yes, it is normal to be taken advantage of when you meet some bosses with low morals. It's winter here in Zurich, Switzerland, and the temperature is below 0. Compared with the big cities in the country, this city is absolutely dwarfed by its population. Because it is far away from the east, there is basically no atmosphere here. Su Yurong bought a commercial flat in the city center, which is the most expensive. She chose to come here, firstly because all her money is in Swiss banks, and secondly because of the medical conditions here are very good, the pace of life is slow, and it is relatively convenient to travel to other European countries. During the Chinese New Year, Su Yurong had 2 phone calls with her family. Su Yurong told her family that she was pregnant. The fetus was currently normal, and her life was relatively monotonous. Apart from the occasional shopping, she would participate in any public activities. The rest of the time basically at home. Even though her life was so monotonous, she still found business opportunities. There were many international students in the universities here. Most of these students from the Third World wanted to stay and work locally, but they didn't know the local area at all. After participating in several activities, Su Yurong met some students from China and other countries, and they were generally confused about the future. And because she was a VIP of UBS, she participated in several membership activities and learned that there was a lack of financial talents in the local area. On the one hand, she couldn't find a job, and on the other hand, she couldn't find people. There was business here, and she didn't want to stay at home during the Chinese New Year. She visited various local agencies several times. To find out briefly, where are the high-end talent agencies? The local area is in a kind of blank area, and most of them have only two ways. School recruitment, letters of recommendation. If you can't get an internship in a large financial institution through school recruitment, you will have to leave the country after graduation, and time is tight. Su Yurong then found another law firm and spent money to consult on legal risks. He learned that the responsibilities of intermediary companies are relatively vague. Generally speaking, when there is a dispute, the judge will favor the weak. This involves two aspects: training and ensuring employment. Liquidated damages are more important. There are no other risks. Su Yurong went home and thought about it for 2 days before deciding to take action. In order to avoid legal risks, she was going to find a local person to form a partnership. She would pay for it herself and the other party would be the responsible person. In the short term, it absorbs local international students in Switzerland, conducts course training, and then recommends them to local financial institutions. As long as they work, they can stay there. Later, they can continue to exploit these people and help them handle immigration procedures. Su Yurong feels that the Swiss market is too small and will expand to the whole of Europe in the future. If you are an Indian, when you sign the contract, you must write a guarantee that you will be recommended 5 times by financial institutions in Europe. You can even find a few junk financial institutions. Offer them a high price to get them hired. As for how to get through financial institutions, Su Yurong is very familiar with the methods. If someone joins a world-renowned institution, he will use him as a template for promotion. As for small and medium-sized financial institutions, they can use the rebate model to negotiate with them. Docking. Su Yurong just went ahead and found a local person within a week, opened an intermediary company in his name, and then began to participate in various activities at schools and banks, mainly using his status as a Swiss bank VIP to carry out activities in the circle. Build momentum. And the identity she used to endorse was that of the wife of Lu Feng, the richest man in China. Suddenly, everyone in the Swiss circle knew that Lu Feng's wife was raising a baby here and she wanted to help the students here. Everyone gathered together and praised Su Yurong as a beautiful, intellectual, and helpful person. Big sister. After the 15th day of the first lunar month, Lu Feng also officially said goodbye to various dinner parties. Wei Yandan went to the mainland many times to find suitable cities for investment. However, the harsh conditions of the hurricane really made it difficult for some companies. I'll go there myself. Those people won't give you any discounts if they see you being easy to bully. Don't look like you don't have enough confidence when you go. Lu Feng looked at Wei Yandan and criticized. Wei Yandan couldn't help but smile bitterly. She went with a mouth and everything was free. How could she be confident? What are we going to do? We are going to help them. Faced with the arrogance of those cities, how many jobs will be created once the factory is built? Lu Feng said to Wei Yandan, help me prepare the tickets for tomorrow. Okay. Wei Yandan secretly breathed a sigh of relief. her authority was not very large. When talking to those mayors, she could not guarantee their employment rate. Moreover, many cities required that local companies be given priority in terms of supporting facilities, which contained many harsh conditions. She didn't dare to agree rashly. In the evening, Lu Feng went home and bought a few newspapers. The headline was that two giants, telecom and mobile, were officially listed on the Hong Kong stock market today, with a price increase of 37% on the first day of listing. Lu Feng really didn't care much about financial and securities companies. The problem was that he didn't have anyone who could take advantage of him. Changing people hastily would have a greater impact on the entire company. "What's wrong?" Zhang Fengxia came over and asked. Lu Feng explained his thoughts, and Zhang Fengxia thought for a while and said, "Didn't Mr. Su do a good job before? Why don't you call her back and let her continue to take care of it?" "Ha! Ha ha," Lu Feng sneered twice and said, "I'm afraid that if she takes care of me for 2 years, I won't even be able to get through the company gate. By the way, don't you want to invest and build a factory in the mainland? My dad's city is also attracting investment. Why don't I call you and ask?" Zhang Fengxia sat down and said, "It just so happens that the problems on both sides have been solved. I'm afraid it's not suitable. The place your dad manages is not suitable for the development of the electronics industry." Lu Feng was afraid of being blamed, so he said, "Then just give me a call." Zhang Fengxia called over the phone and explained the situation. The person on the other end was completely angry and cursed, "You turned your elbow outward, and I just tolerated it. Why do you want me to recruit a bandit for the millions of people here? No bandit dares to make such conditions." Latest website. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 1278. Latest website. Lu Feng's conditions were a bit scary even in coastal areas, let alone inland. You must know that the tasks and authorities given by the state to various regions are different. For some developing areas, they must be given free rein, but some cities in the mainland must not do this, otherwise the whole country will become a pot of porridge. After receiving a lot of scolding, the phone was hung up. Zhang Fengxian looked at Lu Feng and said helplessly, "It seems I can't help you." "It's okay, I booked a ticket for tomorrow and will go back to Shenzhen," Lu Feng said to her. Currently, the best investment city in the mainland is Shenzhen. Whether it is terminals or industries, it is very good for the development of mobile phones. "Go back tomorrow," Zhang Fengxia thought for a moment and said, "I originally planned to go back to the mainland in 3 days. How about we go back together tomorrow? Sister Xiao Yan should be back too." Lu Feng understood what she wanted to do. Maybe it would be more appropriate for her to go. He thought for a while and said, "Okay, I'll ask someone to book a ticket for you. You can bring your child with you. Those child care workers take the teacher with you too." The two of them discussed it and booked 2 high-end cabins. The next morning, a group of 6 or 7 people boarded the boat back to Shenzhen. After getting off the boat, Zhang Fengxia took several child care providers back to the villa, while Lu Feng went straight to the municipal government. At the end of last year, people from the investment promotion office contacted Lu Feng. They were a little worried about the conditions Lu Feng offered. Although it was Hong Kong funded, Lu Feng could only stay away for a year at most. Even if freshwater fish is sold as seafood, you can't just go in and rinse it and then sell it as seafood, right? At the municipal reception desk, the newly arrived Mayor Zhang received Lu Feng. The two sides set up their positions and started talking. Lu Feng looked at the person in front of him and felt a little unsure in his heart. After all, this person was also a top figure many years later. Hurricane Capital is now completely Hong Kong owned. According to the local investment requirements, We also meet them. As for setting up an industrial park, the future expansion space is huge. We will form an industrial cluster and drive the supply chain. There are so many companies, Lu Feng said seriously. If we go well, we will start production in August. According to my market estimates, we can expand production next year. What is the expected output? How many jobs will be provided? Mayor Zhang asked. We are now conducting research on the fact that as of the end of last year, the national mobile phone market sold 12 million mobile phones. In 1996, this figure was only 4 million units, which has tripled. Last year, the shipment volume of Bird mobile phones was 70. There are over 10,000 units, and the rest are all overseas brands. With brands such as Ericsson, Nokia, and Motorola as the main players, we estimate that the domestic mobile phone market will reach 30 million units this year. This is a market worth hundreds of billions, and with continued expansion, we hope to increase sales within 1 year after Hurricane is put into production. Achieve shipments of 1 million units. At the same time, it will drive the entire industry chain. For example, casings, screens, buttons, speakers, microphones, etc. The number of jobs created by the mobile phone factory alone is expected to be more than 1,000. In addition, it will drive the industry chain. In the first year, the number of jobs will be directly adding indirect jobs. The increase is expected to be 10,000 jobs. The data presented by Lu Feng alone are indeed exciting. It provides tens of thousands of jobs, which cannot be ignored by any city in the country, not to mention that it is still during the period of mass layoffs. Mr. Lu, it's not that we can't agree to the requests you made, but there are conditions. That is, your local income needs to be used locally, that is, funds are intercepted and reinvested locally. At the same time, local funds are indeed nervous. You need to make an advance payment, Mayor Zhang said. Advance capital. Lu Feng was a little confused. Why did he still have his own idea, and asked, how to advance capital? Because the current situation is indeed very special. The land can be given free of charge and taxes can also be exempted. However, you should pay out the funds to cover the park first. When we have sufficient funds next year, we will return the money to you, and you can use this money, return it in batches within 5 years without interest, Mayor Zhang suggested. Lu Feng was stunned when he heard this. After he advanced the money, others stopped paying him, or the municipal government faced difficulties every year. What should he do? The two parties did not discuss going together, and then Lu Feng proposed that Shenzhen City invest in the site, the municipal government issue bonds, and let the city investment sign the contract. He would contribute 20% of the total funds to ensure personnel wages, and build the park first. If the urban investment and municipal government do not believe in themselves, then they can bring in local banks. Lu Feng can use the Tianjin factory as a mortgage, so that this circle game will be perfect. The municipal government hopes that Lu Feng will provide some money. At least building the park will create a lot of jobs. However, Lu Feng is not willing to invest so much in the early stage. Equipment will need to be introduced later, and that will be the bulk of the funds. The conversation continued until the evening, and the two parties broke up on bad terms. However, before leaving, the director of the Investment Promotion Office still communicated with Lu Feng and said that they could negotiate again. Mr. Lu, the current situation is special. It's not like those years ago, not to mention that your status as a Hong Kong investor is not solid. The director of the Investment Promotion Office looked confused. We are really sincere, you can't not pay a penny, pushing all funding issues to 5 years later. If the park has been running for a year, Mayor Zhang will not look good. He takes office in January, and it is inappropriate to do such a thing first thing, right? The initial investment is too high, and I can't bear the risk alone. I'm not a newbie. Suzhou, Dongguan, Tianjin, so many factories allow it. If you can't handle it, Then I can only go to Ningbo, Lu Feng said with regret. I have feelings for Shenzhen. I can understand, but you have to take care of the place. Let's have dinner and have a good chat tonight, the director of the investment promotion office said as he took Lu Feng into the car. No, I won't eat. This is not about eating, so we can't give in. Lu Feng waved his hand and walked towards his car. Lu Feng could feel the current financial tension. Even cities like Shenzhen were beginning to lose their wealth. It was obvious that other cities were not wealthy. Regarding going to Ningbo, Lu Feng didn't just talk about it. Ningbo is a city that is considered good in terms of geographical location, port, and industry. In addition, Bird has already started production locally, and some supply chains are relatively mature. If possible, Lu Feng really plans to place the factory there. He wanted to go home directly, but then he thought that Zhang Fengxia and Zhang Xiaoyan should be thinking about it at the moment. Lu Feng thought about it and went to the hotel. After checking in, he contacted Du Guoying directly by phone and met tomorrow, and then left for Ningbo. In the villa, Zhang Xiaoyan was particularly happy for Zhang Fengxia's sudden visit. She is a kind person and has always felt that Zhang Fengxia is a good person, and the relationship between the two is also good. I came back just after the Chinese New Year. I came back this time to do some errands, and I also want to take my child back to see her grandma and grandpa. Zhang Fengxia looked at Zhang Xiaoyan and said, "You have lost weight." "I have gained a little weight recently. Last year, I only had about 100 pounds left." Zhang Xiaoyan went to see the child while talking, and looked at her. "He has grown up a lot, he is very good," and he fell asleep. "I can sleep very well, just touch the pillow." "Where's Duo? Isn't school finished yet?" Zhang Fengxia took the bag from the side and said, "I also bought her a gift. I heard her call her father and say that she likes Givenchy's skirt. I gave it to her. She bought 4 or 5 sets, and I don't know if she likes them. It's too expensive." "You said a piece of clothing is so expensive." Zhang Xiaoyan sighed and said, "The more you raise this child, the more delicate it becomes. Buy it if you can." Meow Meow has also arranged for 3 childcare workers to take care of her. "I really don't have time when I'm busy. I plan to do some work when I come back this time," Zhang Fengxia said. "Huashat, don't you care?" Zhang Xiaoyan said, a little surprised. "I actually want to go back to Huasha, but the current situation is special. When Lu Feng settles Huasha's debts, it's up to you to do it. After all, you will be the one to manage it later. It's good to have some things of your own," Zhang Fengxia replied. Zhang Xiaoyan felt a little lonely, but she didn't mention it. Then the topic turned to Huasha and they talked about a lot of business development. "Actually, I've been watching how he runs his business, and it's all about expansion." "Why did he collapse when he came to me?" Zhang Xiaoyan said, a little unhappy. "Companies need to meet several conditions to expand and compete. Market expansion, industrial upgrading, service upgrading, and cost reduction. At least 2 of these 4 conditions must be met." Lu Feng's previous expansions were all about market expansion and industrial upgrading. He said in color TV services are also being upgraded. Without these conditions, it would be no less difficult to defeat the original industry leader. However, the daily chemical market is expanding year by year. As long as the debt is dealt with this time and we do it slowly, the future will definitely not be too bad. "Yes," Zhang Fengxia comforted, "it's okay, who hasn't suffered a loss when starting a business? They all figured it out step by step. Stop talking about this, let's go out to eat and pick up Duo on the way." Zhang Xiaoyan stood up and said. The 3 of them booked a private room in the restaurant. When Duo heard that Zhang Fengxia had bought her clothes, she happily praised Aunt Fengxia for her beauty. After a noisy evening, the night was already deep. The 2 of them returned to the bedroom and lay down. The dim bedside lamp shone on Zhang Xiaoyan's face. The 2 of them lay in silence, hoping that the other would speak first. He's back too. Zhang Fengxia was the first to break the silence. Yeah, I went to the city to talk about cooperation. I think Lu Feng really likes you, but he doesn't want to let go. There are some things that I feel are better off than blocking. I also thought about using the child to force him to submit, but then I thought, that way what is left of our days? Arguments, doubts, never peace. Zhang Fengxia sighed and said, I have met so many rich people over the years, and it seems that it is normal for them to have a lot of messy women around them. I also know that you can't accept it. The question is, what can we do if we don't accept it? If you like it, you have to accept it. Latest website. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 1279. Latest website. Zhang Xiaoyan was silent for a long time, let out a long sigh, and said slowly, that's what they say. It is said that old grudges can be eliminated by showing off one's face, and grievances can be wiped out with a smile. How can it be so easy to get over that hurdle in your heart? So we need to face reality. I also know that you can't let him go. After all, you two have gone through ups and downs over the years. Compared to me, you have a friendship that shares joys and sorrows. I don't dare to talk about it. Comparing emotions, I just hope everyone can be happy. Zhang Fengxia leaned close to Su Yorong and said, a person's life is only a few decades older. We are no longer young girls in our 20s. It is too difficult to meet someone you like in this life. If I were you, I would be thinking that once I miss it, I really miss it. My choice may not necessarily be the best, but it must be the one with the least regrets. If one day I can't find what I want in this relationship, I will choose to leave. Instead of spending time in entanglement and repetition life. Zhang Xiaoyan looked sideways at Zhang Fengxia and said, I wish I could be as cool and unrestrained as you. I am always afraid that others will be unhappy and always look forward and backward. I have also struggled, but I failed. It doesn't matter to me anymore. Several people live their lives, I accept my fate. Zhang Fengxia felt that her mood was a little low, so she started chatting about other things. The two of them agreed to go shopping together tomorrow. After she finished handling the matters in the investment department, she would give herself 10.5 days to go out and have fun for a few days. Spend money happily. According to what Zhang Fengxia said, the money spent was not from us two sisters, but we were so happy that we didn't need to worry about anything else. Zhang Xiaoyan's mood relaxed a lot, and they fell asleep after chatting for a while. Early the next morning, Lu Feng took Du Guoying's team to Ningbo. On the plane, Du Guoying told Lu Feng about the situation in Ningbo, especially the major suppliers of bird mobile phones and the attitude of the municipal government. Mr. Lu, Ningbo is different from Shenzhen. This company is rich, Du Guoying said to Lu Feng with a sly look on his face. I heard that Hong Kong Capital withdrew from Ningbo last year because Bird wanted to focus on mobile phones and the local municipal government injected funds. And there is internal information that they are in contact with the French company Sagem. Sagem, Lu Feng asked in confusion, what are you doing? A French communications giant and a supplier of fighter communications, Ningbo's municipal administration is a well-connected family, Du Guoying whispered. Only then did Lu Feng understand why Bird was called the fighter jet in the mobile phone. He spent a long time cooperating with a French fighter jet company. Don't laugh so wildly, as if we are going to eat at a wealthy restaurant. Be more serious, Lu Feng stared at Du Guoying and ordered. Lu Feng was still on the plane, and Mr. Su from Bird was already on his way to the municipal government. At the beginning of this year, there were rumors that Lu Feng was coming back. Mr. Su and the founders immediately strengthened the market and laid out all sales terminals. And also strengthened the introduction of technical cooperation. Originally, they thought that they should do their best as much as possible, but they didn't expect that this kid Lu Feng would break into his hometown directly. If he came to Ningbo to build a factory, they were afraid that the competition for some resources would be particularly fierce. Bird is just a mobile phone factory, engaged in the communications business. It cannot compete with Hurricane in terms of overall research and development. The best way is to guard its own territory. There was Lufeng before, and there was PHS after. What's more, foreign investment was like a wolf and a tiger. Overnight, the mobile phone market seemed to be in the white-hot state of color TV a few years ago. At the municipal reception desk, Mr. Su looked at Mayor Zhang in front of him and said, "Our sales this year are expected to double. Production is at full capacity. The market demand for waveguide mobile phones is extremely strong now, and we will start services this year. Quality, mainly after-sales service." Mr. Su talked endlessly about the development of waveguide, more like he was here to report on his work. "Mr. Su, you should also be aware of the current situation across the country. It is not only about development, but also responsible for ensuring people's livelihood and employment. This year has started well, but we must maintain a good state. Some leaders from the Ministry of Industry and Information Technology will inspect it next month. You go back, make preparations." Mayor Zhang stood up and said, "I have a guest here. It's okay, I'm not busy today. I'm here to bring you some tea, a thermos, or something," Mr. Su said hurriedly. Mayor Zhang made a good excuse, but the other party was not moved at all. He just said that I am here today to serve the people, and there are many things about enterprise development that I want to talk to you about. It is best to talk to you. Let's have a meal together at noon. Mayor Zhang has a clear idea of what the young man in front of him is thinking, but he has also heard a little bit about Lufeng. To be honest, he doesn't really like people like Lufeng who are careless, but once the opportunity for development is seized, if you live, you will catch it, if you miss it, you will lose it. So he decided to meet him. At 10 o'clock in the morning, Lufeng and his party got off the plane and drove directly to the municipal government. The director of the Investment Promotion Office was responsible for greeting them at the gate. After being polite, they entered the living room. After waiting for a few minutes, Mayor Zhang came out. "President Lu, right? You are so young." Mayor Zhang shook Lufeng's hand and said politely, "I'm not young anymore. I'm much older than a few years ago," Lufeng said with a smile. "I am yearning for Ningbo. It is known as a place with a collection of ancient and modern books and a port that connects the world. After getting off the airport, this 1,000-year-old city under your governance, the ancient city is thriving and full of vitality." "Ha ha 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 ha," Mayor Zhang said with a smile on his face. "Mr. Lu is really good at praising people. I heard you are good at cursing people before, but I learned the other side when we met today. Please sit down, please." Mainly because Ningbo's development in recent years has attracted national attention. Whether it is port business or high-tech industry, especially this year's waveguide mobile phones, they are also best-selling domestically. Lufeng sat down and said, "Hurricane wants to return to the mainland this time, Ningbo as one of the important choices. We were in Shenzhen yesterday and we are here today. Is it because we didn't come to an agreement with Shenzhen that we came here today?" asked an unharmonious voice. Lufeng looked at the last seat. Sitting there was a man in his 30s, with slightly fair complexion, thick eyebrows, and big eyes. He had a decent appearance and was wearing a suit. "Who is this?" Lufeng looked at him and asked. "This is Mr. Su, the founder of Bird. I happen to be here today to have something to do," Mayor Zhang introduced. Something happened? Lufeng didn't believe this. He said to Mr. Su, "We have been friends for a long time. Mr. Su is a talented person. We come to Ningbo not to compete with anyone for the market. No one can steal the market. We come to Ningbo. I hope that both parties will become bigger and stronger. We made a Jiaxin mobile phone before, and Mr. Du or Mr. Zhu should have been in contact with you at that time. Hurricane is among the best in China in terms of research and development, hardware, and communications. We can communicate more. I believe that with the help of hurricane, waveguide can reach a higher level. Lu Feng's words made Mr. Su roll his eyes and just sat there and stopped talking. Let's not talk about corporate cooperation here. Since Mr. Lu has plans to invest, can you tell us what you think? The director of the investment promotion office asked. Our request is very simple. Starting this year, won't there be investment incentives for Hong Kong, Taiwan, and foreign capital? Now we are also Hong Kong capital. At the same time, we can get preferential treatment in terms of taxation, ports, freight, and policies. Lu Feng extended his hand towards Du Guoying. Reach out. Du Guoying took out a prepared folder from his bag. Lu Feng took out several printed white papers from the folder and handed them to everyone. As for me, Xiangzi, I will tell you what I have to say. We, as domestic enterprises at the forefront of science and technology, can definitely bring you more returns than what you need. Our /U0026D capabilities, jobs, industrial clusters, even the atmosphere of the company, etc. After reading the information in their hands, everyone present fell silent and looked at each other. If they had known that a bandit was coming into the house, they would not have let him come this time. Let's not talk about whether Hurricane's identity as a Hong Kong investor can be determined. Even if Hong Kong investors come, they can't do this. You don't have to pay a penny, everything is ready, at least you can get the money to build the factory, and the land is not free, it is free after reaching various indicators agreed by both parties, and there are technology conversion requirements after foreign investment enters, for example supporting enterprises, targeted procurement, etc. These requirements of Lu Feng are not indicators of foreign investment, they are indicators of aliens. If you feel something is inappropriate, you can speak up and talk about it later. I am a person who upholds a win-win attitude towards the local area. When companies come here, they regard this place as their home and build a beautiful home together, Lu Feng said sincerely. After hearing Lu Feng's beautiful words, Mayor Zhang took another look at the white paper in his hand and secretly thought, this is a cultured bandit. Why don't we have dinner? The director of the investment promotion office suggested. Du Guoying was stunned. He looked at Lu Feng and felt a little confused. He secretly thought that the lion opened his mouth. This time, he opened his mouth loudly and stopped talking. Mr. Su sat aside with his heart in his stomach, but he was also secretly frightened by the conditions proposed by Lu Feng. Is there really any city in the world that can accept such terms? There is definitely an inside story on where such investment contracts are signed. This is not just a matter of the loss of state-owned land. To build a factory, the state needs to take money, and it is also tax-free. The most important thing is that the land use rights of the park are required to be transferred to the company. This means that Lu Feng only needs to find a bank to mortgage the park. The most shameless thing about being able to directly get money to buy assembly lines is that Hurricane is a high-tech enterprise and requires double subsidies, both national and local subsidies. Then let's talk over dinner. We can make concessions in some places. We can't just look at short-term contributions. I think the introduction of companies like Hurricane to Ningbo will have a huge boost to the city's image and industrial development. Many years later, Lu Feng Station, he stood up and said. Mayor Zhang smiled awkwardly and said, eating without talking or sleeping without talking is a traditional Chinese virtue. Latest website.